We're going to talk about how to resolve conflict. Every marriage has conflict because we're different people. We have different views. We have different likes and dislikes. We come from different family of origins. We have different expectations, different experiences, desires, and so forth. So a conflict's not assigned that you married the wrong person. It's really just a sign that you're human. And some conflicts are over minor issues, but when we don't resolve them, they become major problems.
So when Brother Johnson was talking about our kids and how great they are, which is very flattering, thank you. One Sunday after church, we were all in the car together. They were a little bit younger, and we were trying to decide where we were going to go eat. And our kids all had an opinion. We were just like trying to decide where we were, should we go here or there? And they're like, I'm not going there, I want to go here. And they were all just like on it, just like shooting out their opinion and demands. And it wasn't like, well, I would like, no. It was just, they were like throwing out their demands, and it was just crazy. And my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, what have we done wrong? Like we try to be good parents. They're so strong. What have we done? And our oldest, Ethan, pipes up from the back seat and he's like, have you met the two of you? Like, we're strong because you're strong. And I'm like, okay, we have a point, But if you have any strong personalities or type A personalities, we have like a family of 5 of them. You're going to have some conflict. And so it's not about whether you have conflict, it's about how you deal with the conflict. So we want to look to the scripture again and find out some good ways to deal and resolve conflict. So Philippians chapter 4 says, I plead with you, Euodia, and I plead with Syntyche to agree with each other in the Lord. Yes, I ask you, loyal yokefellow, help these women who have contended at my side in the cause of the gospel, along with Clement and the rest of the fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice.
So there's obviously some conflict here, and for Paul to call them out in public, so to speak, in the book that he's writing, it must have been they must have been important figures, and it must have been a conflict that many people knew about. And so Paul called them out, and what he was wanting them to do is to deal with their problem, with their conflict. And then he basically is saying, in so many words, you get your conflict settled and you can rejoice. And so negotiation is an important element of a settlement and can only be accomplished through reason.
So negotiation, here's your fill in the blank. Negotiation is an important element and can only be accomplished through reason, not through emotion, not through flared up feelings, but through reason.
So we want to talk about the realities of conflict a little bit, and we also want to try to give you some direction, some tools that can help you. As I said a moment ago, many couples get stuck in conflict, and they just keep going in circles, and they never get out of it, and there's a very contentious relationship. And so we want to help you because your marriage didn't start on conflict, but we may be in that, but we need to get out of it. So Philippians chapter 2.
In Philippians again, chapter 2. If you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. So we're going to look at some areas of unity.
So let's bring these out, what Paul said here, and we just read it. She just read it. We need to be one in mind, okay? And this is your personality, your thought process, your goals, so forth. One in love, Paul said. So what we're finding here is it's a well-rounded oneness and unity. It's not one-dimensional, but Paul actually mentions 4 things. One in spirit. Marriages work much better when you walk together in your relationship with God. And so when you're both striving spiritually, very, very powerful. And then one in purpose. Number 4, one in purpose.
So a critical aspect of a good marriage is being like-minded.
How can 2 walk together, Amos says, unless they agree? And so you want to be like-minded. And the communication that we are encouraging you to take part in and to develop and to get better in will help you get back on track and walk together and be more like-minded. How can you be like-minded if you're not communicating, if you're not, quote unquote, walking together? Communication helps us stay together and walk together, so it's very important. And it's not meaning that you lose your individuality. And like-minded doesn't mean that you meld into one person and it's all sameness. It's not that. You're unique, you have different thoughts, you come from different backgrounds, but it's sharing your values, your purpose, and your goals and your plans.
Yeah, so like-mindedness has more to do with having the same values than the same opinions and the same ideas all the time.
Verses 3 and 4.
Philippians chapter 2 again. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Remember, we're talking about resolving conflict. But in humility, consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. So, fantastic scriptures that we can bring and apply to our marriages.
Self-centeredness and selfishness sucks the life out of a marriage. It really does. And so the idea here is to consider one another. Think about one another. Be honorable to one another. And this is Bible. Put each other first. These are principles and concepts of getting along. And they're applicable in your marriage, but they're also applicable on your job, in your neighborhood, in your apartment complex. But very important that we bring these part of our marriage.
Okay, so verse 14, out of the same chapter, it says, do everything without complaining or arguing.
Mic drop, let's go home. Do everything without griping and arguing.
That's easy.
That's an idea. That's what we strive for. Ideal. That's what we strive for. That's the ideal. That's an idea. That's an ideal place to be. And so here's your fill in the blank. If you try to bury your problems will bury you. So we got to get real about this.
Yeah, you can bring up disagreements. You can bring up issues. It's how you deal with them. You don't want to just bury things and not deal with them, because then you get into the area of resentment and rebellion that we talked about earlier.
Where every conversation has an edge to it. We get into that. Where we get into some bad habits in our marriages. And so today we're asking you to stop, think, consider. Where are you? What place are you in your marriage that we talked about? Lesson number 1. Does all of your communication have an undertone to it? Because if so, you need to really stop and take a closer look. And let's do that right here. There's several things that I think we can glean from this scripture that I think that we need to understand. Number 1, conflict is normal. I mean, Paul's dealing with conflict in the church in the New Testament. It's a normal process of life. So don't panic. And don't think that, they're the wrong person, I'm in the wrong marriage, I got to get a new thing. The problem is not really the problem, it's how you handle the problem. And so, you gotta focus on a solution more than just the problem.
And sometimes conflict results from sin, and sometimes it might need more, if you want to say, intervention to get resolution. And if so, then that would be a situation where you would want to seek counsel from your pastor and get some help. But just normal conflict is what we're talking about, and how to deal with them and how you handle it. Number 2, conflict is an opportunity for growth. So if you're not able to resolve conflict, it can get you in a rut in your relationship. But if you can learn to deal with conflict, it can be an opportunity for growth. So you want to realize the question is not how can we avoid conflict. The question is not how can I win, but the question is how are we going to grow through this? How are we going to see a positive outcome? And like Paul said, have victory or rejoicing after we deal with
So
conflict.
remember the 5 stages of marriage? Romance, reality, you remember all that? One of the things that what happens if you don't learn to deal with conflict, you get stuck. You get stuck in one of those stages. As an example, rebellion. You get stuck in rebellion, and you can't get out of it. So you need to learn how to deal with conflict and be able to identify areas that you're prone to having conflict in, and begin to work through that. We're going to give you some real life exercises to help you, I believe, here going forward.
Okay, so number 3, conflict must be diffused or resolved, or it will destroy. So conflict has to be dealt with, it has to be resolved, or it will destroy the relationship.
It can be good, but it can be destructive. And most people, I think, or too many people, I should say, allow it to be destructive instead of allowing it to be a building block. And so, when conflict happens, you've got to learn to communicate through it and cooperate, and that's even when it's hurtful and it's sensitive. And you got to look at the nonverbal communication, and you got to be careful because you get hurt emotionally, in some relationships even physically. And so you've got to do something to run to your problem before your problem runs over you. Number 4, healthy conflict requires rules so that nobody gets hurt. She mentioned rules of engagement. Rules of engagement are a big thing. Talk about how you're going to disagree. It really is very, very important. We set down rules of engagement in our relationship, I think, before we were even married. This is how we're going to proceed.
So we talked about a few rules with communication, but we're going to take it a little bit broader here. So again, the ones about communication, you're never going to threaten divorce. Just make a rule that that's not a word you're ever going to use in your marriage. You're not going to threaten, well, I'm going to my mom's, or I'm leaving, or whatever it is. You're not going to use your words to hurt. So again, that goes no name calling, no bad communication. The next thing, rules that you need to have is no physical violence. Obviously, we're Christians. That should not be a part of our lives, our relationships. So this is another.
And that's for both sides.
Yeah, it's not women. You don't have the right to hit your man just because he's bigger or stronger than you. It's disrespectful, and so it goes both ways. No physical violence whatsoever. No name calling. Another big thing is keep your kids out of your conflict and disagreements. Okay, go behind closed doors. Go in the bedroom. Don't let them hear you trying to resolve conflict and the heat of it. Keep them out of it, especially if it concerns them. If you're having a conflict over your children and they know that they can come and bring division between the two of you, they're smart, they're going to do that. And then they're going to build a wedge there, and you guys aren't going to be able to get anything productive out of that. So
guys, don't tell your kids your wife's crazy or their mother's crazy. Yeah, I know, son. I know she's crazy. I've been living with this for 30 years. And vice versa. It's probably not a good thing to do.
Yeah, so don't complain to your kids about your spouse. Don't bring them into the middle of your problems. Remember, the best gift you can give your kids is a healthy marriage, modeling that.
So we're going to talk about a few common areas of conflict and hopefully give you a few minor solutions to how to get through this. And so hopefully not all of you have all of these issues, but these are some of the primary issues that we find literally cause conflict. Number 1 is money. Money causes conflict in a marriage. And money, what we find is money fights are rarely about money. They're more about control. They might be about fear. And so when you have that kind of conflict in your marriage, you really need to look and try to discover what the real issue really is.
So you need to get on the same page and have a plan for your money and be in agreement about how you're going to spend money. You can't have like sneaking around, hiding expenditures, making big purchases without being in communication with the other person. You have to be on the same page about your money.
I would say, in talking about a solution, I counsel people to do this, and the exception, and I think there might be exceptions to just about most rules, but the exception to this one would be maybe if you get married later in life. I don't mean 30, I'm talking like 60. Maybe a spouse died or something. But other than that type of scenario is best, in my opinion, when it comes to money. It's not her money, my money, it's our money. And putting your finances together. I've been out with couples that it's their first and only marriage, and yet they keep everything very separate. I don't think it's a heaven or hell issue. Don't get me wrong, but I think you lack something in unity, and I think you demonstrate we're in this together when you do that. Now, I can understand maybe some people do that because the other person's a complete train wreck with money. And, the only way I can have anything is I got to keep it separate. Well, that's really not, the separate's not really the problem or the solution. It's really going back to where good money management, and we don't have time to go into that, but good money management starts with putting everything together and creating a budget together. Okay? You'll never become what God wants you to become and what you hope to become financially until you budget. And so, one of the ways to stop or to alleviate arguments over money is to have a budget together. You sit down and you do a budget. Or if one doesn't want to sit down, the other do the budget and then run it by them and have them sign off on it. But you've got to have an agreement on your money. And so that's really one of the better ways to handle money is to do that. And so I encourage you to do a budget in one of your hour meetings. Isn't that awesome? We have so much to do. This is great. Second area that often arises as a conflict is sex. And so sex is a very important element. Element is a good word, I guess, in marriage. God created it. He designed it. And it's supposed to be part of a good, healthy marriage. And we all get squeamy and we get weird over it because of obvious reasons, but let's just talk about it. We're married for just a little bit. We're not doing a whole lesson on it. We're not going to get too involved in this, but if you have sexual issues, you need to try to solve them. If you're not, this is where good communication comes in. And if your needs are not being met, it needs to be something discussed, because this has the propensity to really cause a lot of conflict in a marriage. And
a lot of times, lack of sex is because, I'm just too tired, or, I'm not in the mood, which probably no man ever said that, but most of the time it's just mismatched sex drives. And so, like my husband said, communicating and making sure that we meet one another's needs in this area is very important, because a lot of times what the woman is looking for in the relationship actually is fulfilled through, it's not like you have a sex drive that matches your husband's, but your need for intimacy and closeness is actually also fulfilled in this way. So, you have to understand, men are not perverted. They have a drive that was given to them by God, that you, the wife, are the only one that can meet that need. And so you want to be willing and be the one that is willing to meet that need for your husband.
So when there's problems in this area, what happens is there's retreat, and then we just kind of give up, and we resent, and so a level of intimacy is never experienced after that. And so this is something that it was very natural at the beginning, very very it wasn't anything that was awkward and weird, but maybe in some relationships it's developed into that. And so it becomes a real issue. So you've got to talk about that. And sometimes, as we went back to an earlier lesson, we talked about we have areas where we just know we don't go, and we've created this scenario where you don't go there because it's going to blow up and get ugly. And sex is one of those that is like it's off limits to talk about. But if you do the communication summit, this is something that can come up. Don't be closed off. Don't be shut off. If you want to get married, you have to open up to this and talk about it. Very, very important. So there's some solutions here. I think you have those on your handouts.
No.
You don't? Okay, let me give you some solutions that might help. Talk about it, number one. That's a solution. Talk about it. And it's not fair to close off and say, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to, that's not fair. Make room for sex is a second one. And really, because as you are married, the raw passion and emotions, your life gets busy. They're not quite there, but it's still a very important thing. And so make time for it. Be intentional. And literally, you read books and it literally says schedule. That's crazy. It sounds crazy. Well, if it's not just, passionate and just, no, you can literally schedule sex into your marriage. And it sounds very unromantic, but when it's all said and done, it will be beneficial and bring you together. It's very important. And so, go to number 3. Go ahead.
I was going to say another solution there is for the women, let him enjoy looking and let her enjoy closeness. So you have different needs and different things that need to be fulfilled through your intimacy, and you need to give each other what the other person needs. Actually,
again, we're not on this. We can do a whole lesson, but the point is when you look at the Scripture, when you look at the Bible actually there's an expectation of sexual intimacy in the marriage. It's taught on in the book of Corinthians by Paul. Number 3, another area of conflict is our roles. Yes, ROLES.
So this can be difficult too when you come from different backgrounds. Like we came from 2 completely different backgrounds. I was from California. My parents got divorced. I wasn't raised in church. What I saw modeled was completely different than what my husband had modeled in his perfect upbringing. I mean, his parents were married for 61 years. They were godly, incredible parents. And so what he had modeled and what I had modeled was completely different. But I decided very early on that I wanted to have a godly marriage. And so I thought, I'm not going to pattern everything after just what I knew growing up because I saw so many things that weren't right, even though I love my parents. But there's a lot of gender differences. God made us completely different. And so I had to figure out early on that, I want to do it God's way. And I have to figure this out and figure out what is going to work and make a godly marriage. So
when we got married, she thought I would fix everything in the house. Turns out I don't fix anything.
Yeah, my dad fixed everything, so I just thought men fix things. Well,
turns out this man does.
Turns out he is certain kind of thing.
I make a phone call. That's how I fix things.
But confusion can come over roles. We live in a stressful world. Things have changed a lot because now we have 2 income households, and so you have to find a blend, something that blends and works for your actual relationship. Roles used to be defined a lot more clearly than they are today. Things have gotten really blended, but you need to compromise and come up with something that works.
Who does the laundry? Who does the dishes? Who cooks the meal? All these roles that tend to cause conflict are something that we need to work on. So the solution is to negotiate an agreement. We were just actually teaching a pre-marriage counseling last night, and one of the things that they came back with from the last lesson was they had determined that the guy was going to.
He hated to do laundry.
He hated to do laundry, and she hated to wash dishes. So they had discussed that when they get married, he's going to do the dishes, she's going to do the laundry.
So they're going to work.
Figuring out their roles, because there's often conflict in these things. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and literally, it was almost like
literally, if he put dirty clothes,
if I put dirty clothes on in the morning and in the afternoon, they were folded on my bed. Turns out marriage is not like that. and so, I had some adjustments, and I got married almost at 30, so there were a lot of adjustments.
Married a California girl.
Shoo! God still helped me burn.
But the solution is you want to negotiate an agreement about your roles based on what each of you are good at, what you like, what you dislike, and what scenario you find yourself in. If you both work outside the home, then you probably both need to work inside the home and help make that home run. Otherwise, it's not fair for the wife to work a full-time job.
That was anointed.
That was anointed.
You need to write that down. If you both work outside, you both need to work inside.
Yeah. So it's not fair for her to work a full-time job just as many hours outside of the home and then be expected to run everything and change all the light bulbs, take out the trash.
While you sit there on social media.
Right. And so you want to negotiate and come up with a solution.
The fourth area that we often find conflict in is very common is parenting. Parenting crops up, and we discussed this in the first lesson a little bit, but we're not often on the same page. And what we do know is our kids will divide and conquer. They will use this against us if we don't get this together. So, it's real important, again, going back to something we talked last time, communicate, figure out, get on the same page, know how you're going to raise your kids, have the same values, and then you need to also determine how you're going to discipline your kids. Not just literally, but even just in your conversation and creating rules. Unity is very, very important, extremely important. And as I said just a moment ago, if you allow your kids, they will cause or add to the conflict between the two. Because, they'll come to mom, and if mom says no, they'll go to dad, right? And so I've just gotten the habit of saying, "What'd your mom say?" and it's like, well, she said this, and so then I usually jump on board. One of the things that we've strived to do, and we recommend this, is you need to support one another. If you've kind of done your communication and your homework, you kind of know your philosophies, you kind of know what you're generally wanting, and so, if she says something, then I generally am going to support that. If I feel strongly differently, or have a different viewpoint, or know something she doesn't know, then generally what we do, and we recommend, is instead of telling the kid and correcting their mother, my wife, through the kid, saying, well, you can do it anyway, I'll go to her and see her viewpoint, and we'll negotiate and say, well, I feel this way, why? And then I usually come out and say, okay, you're right. No, but sometimes we'll change that way, and then we'll go to the kid and say, well, I talked to your mom, we're going to change this up because of this or whatever. But you cannot consistently and constantly undermine your spouse. You got to get on the same page, or your kids will cause a lot of division.
Okay, so here are some solutions. Conflict decreases as teamwork increases. So working together, working as a team. Another solution is don't solve your differences in front of your kids. We've talked about this. Make sure you do it in private.
This is really, really, really hard. But try not to argue in front of your kids. It's hard. Let's just be honest. There's some times when you're just going to say your piece. But if you can really strive and lean into that, where they don't see that, it's going to be better for you.
And then I just want to come back to this issue. I know we brought it up a few times, but moms, remember your first duty is to your husband, not your children. Of course, we want to nurture and take care of our children, but our first duty is to our husband. Yes, we do have a responsibility to our kids. We recognize that. Our kids didn't raise themselves. If you don't work on your marriage, your children will suffer. So the person that you're pointing all that attention to and all that love, they're actually going to suffer.
They're actually being hurt by you putting so much love on them that you're ignoring your spouse, literally. So that's a true statement. Number 5 is sometimes family causes problems and conflicts. You marry into that family, and
they don't go away.
Yeah, and so, but life is much easier if you learn to strive to have a positive relationship with your in-laws and your larger family. Sometimes it is nearly impossible. Literally, there's scenarios and situations where it's family so toxic you have to draw some really pretty strong boundaries. But beyond those exception areas, you need to do your best to try to have some kind of relationship with your family and their family that you don't allow it to cause conflict. It's much more important that you guys stay bonded and united. And we talked about that in the first lesson where you lead and cleave. Here's the deal. When you have a problem, the blood child is the one that should handle that. Is it down here, solution? Okay. Okay, so write this down, one of your solutions. The blood child needs to handle the problem with the family. In most cases, there's exceptions to everything. And the reason is parents can forgive the kids that are theirs. But when the in-laws or son-in-law and daughter-in-law gets involved and they start trading barbs and get heated, that doesn't go down well. And they remember that.
That creates more lasting tension.
Yeah, that's a scenario for tension to be around for a long time. So if you have a problem that needs to be dealt with the in-laws or with parents, you guys need to talk about it before you confront it. And then the child, the blood child, needs to deal with that, probably with not you there in most cases. And that would be the best way to handle it. Okay? And if you're there, keep your mouth shut. It's very hard to do. We've had some issues that we've had to deal with our parents, And, the other one keeps their mouth shut, because the moment you jump in, it creates a whole nother deal.
A few other solutions: learn to negotiate. So if you're trying to figure out about holidays, how you're going to spend your holidays, whose family you're going to spend it with, you got to learn to negotiate. Another thing is learn to draw boundaries. So you want to have boundaries with your families, that they're not, overpowering, and if that's an issue, have boundaries.
Number 6, and this will be the last area that, is the kind of common area, is parenting, personalities. Personalities. The thing, it's like Paul when he got in church. He said, the things I used to love, I now hate. Y'all ever read that? When you get in church, the things you used to love, you now hate. Well, that's kind of how it is in the marriage. The personality types that you used to love, you now hate. Why did God put opposites together? Opposites attract and then they attack. I got a little chuckle on our way out. I got a little chuckle. That's great. But that's the truth. Maybe you're a night person and they're a morning person, or you're positive and they're negative, or they're a slob and you're neat. And, all these different personality traits that were kind of cute now are not so cute, and so they cause some strife. And so we got to learn to work through those things. And so the solution is to strive for balance. You've got to strive for balance. Keep talking, keep communicating, and respect each other's differences is another solution to this. You cannot expect them to change everything. Their core personalities. This is my father just passed away about 7 weeks ago, and so
I'll tell it.
Okay.
His dad was just an incredible, just the sweetest man, most godly Christian, incredible man, father, dad, and just amazing person. And my husband started saying, I really want to be more like my dad. He said, all I really need to change is just my whole core personality. That's it, just everything.
So, that's kind of, where we are in our personalities that cause strife and division. Work on it. You're probably not going to be able to change your core personality, but you can meet in the middle.
Okay, so we're going to give you some ways to handle conflict on your sheet here. Number 1, you can conquest. Just hang in there until I win. I must win. Just have that mentality. You're just going to conquer. Conquest is one way to handle it. Not really recommended. And
the second way is surrender. And, one becomes a doormat. And, one is overpowering in their strength. And one says, unless I give in, it's just never going to go away.
Or you think, I'll just let him win, because at least that'll bring peace.
And so surrender. That's not a good thing either. It's a temporary solution, but it's not really. One does not really happen.
And then the next one is withdrawal. You
stop speaking. You give them the cold shoulder. You withdraw. You back off. And then sometimes people withdraw and say, "Well, I'm going to attack later." When you're sleeping, you're going to get a frying pan over the head. But right now, everything's good.
Okay, the fourth one here is obviously where we're headed. What we want is resolution. You find a way that you can live with the situation, find a way to get trust and respect. You bring in the rules of engagement, the communication summits. You bring all these healthy tools that we've given you, and you come to a resolution.
So, we're going to go into working things out, and why don't we take 5 minutes like we have. Oh, excuse me, I think we still have to do some fill in the blanks. Is that correct? Do you have some fill in the blanks here? No?
No.
Okay, so how to diffuse conflict in your marriage. Define, initiate, focus, feel, and uncover.
So you guys are going to go through and answer these questions.
So this you don't have to do anything to answer. But there is a question, or to fill in your blank, but there's a question after define your problem. So what's bothering me? And so let's just take a moment to do that. Again, 5 minutes. While we're in the moment, while we're here, let's do that. I think this is a good thing. Some of you like this stuff, as I said earlier, some of you don't, but I think this is a good thing to.
So we're just getting you started.
Okay, so let's, I don't know if my wife went to the bathroom, this takes place. She's so perfect. Anyway, I want to conclude with, first of all, thank you for having us here, Pastor Johnson. We appreciate that. We enjoy this. But beyond that, I really appreciate the fact that he and his wife held this event today because this makes stronger churches, and you have stronger families, and it makes better societies, and it raises better kids and grandkids. So, there's no magic. It's just desire and work. And so anybody in here can have an incredible relationship. Anybody. You can come from the most broken example of a relationship, but you can change history and change the life of your kids and grandkids by making some good choices. And so just to wrap it up, I want to encourage you to really to consider buying one book a year and reading it on relationship. One spouse read it, and then the other spouse read it. Discuss it. I want to encourage you to have one hour a week. Be committed to that for a while. You'll see some marked improvements. And then these lessons, there's just about every point you can go through, but then we gave you specific things. And today, this last lesson, it's the same process. You just work through some of the questions on your own. Is use this to spark conversation and to discover one another better and to make some goals together to have a better relationship. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. We appreciate it very much. Love you guys and respect and honor your pastors. Anything you want to say?
Just enjoyed being here. Thank you.
God bless
you. Thank you very much for being here and sharing. If you can't tell, they're a unique couple. Not very many couples could sit and share, play off each other, and I think it really highlights the marriage relationship that they have. Very high, organized with kids. Jonathan sends his kids to courses or buys courses and puts his kids through courses, sent them to Chicago, and did summer classes. I don't know all the details of it. But very, very high commitment couple, and very organized, and he accomplishes a great deal. So I'm very thankful that he took the time to come, and again, we love him so very much, and it's an honor to have him. Would you one more time give him guarantee you're going to learn something. If you'll apply just some of these, if you haven't been applying them, if you'll apply some of these in your life, it will benefit you.